Okay, well, welcome to this quarter's webinar where here at TRC Electronics, we like to keep all of our clients informed on the latest and greatest of what's happening in industry, but more specifically, what are the biggest things that are happening in the industry that have the greatest impact on our clients. My name's Steve Lagomarsino, and I'm the president here at TRC Electronics. And of course, it's great to see everybody. And I have an incredible co-host, which I'll introduce in just a moment, Lisa Tran. And I thought Lisa and I would do, for those of you, the first time that we're meeting each other, give you everybody a brief intro so that we could get to know one another. I'll start off here. I've been in the industry since 1998 where I've gained valuable experience in the electronics industry, specifically distribution in various sales, engineering, and marketing roles. And I'm serving here as the president at TRC Electronics, where our focus is power conversion, power supplies, and all the peripheral components that support them. So with that, I'd like to welcome Lisa to the call. Hey, Lisa, how you doing today?
I'm excellent, Steve. So good afternoon, everyone. As Steve mentioned, my name is Lisa Tran. I'm the Senior Director of Operations here at TRC. I've been with the company for about 14 years, and I started with TRC in accounting and purchasing. And fast forward to present day, I lead several core operational functions within the organization. One of those functions being in supply chain and logistics. And what I love about this role is we have the opportunity to support and provide valuable information to our clients on various topics that are impacting the electronics industry.
All right, awesome, Lisa. I know you and I have been preparing for this webinar here for the past couple of weeks. There's been so much that's been changing, and we wanted to time it where we felt like it settled down, and we could provide you information that hopefully will be valid for a period of time where it wasn't type of information 1 week later was no longer going to be fresh because of any type of volatility. But I think we're at a good spot where we have some stability, and we can provide you everybody here some valuable info that you can use moving forward over the next several months. So with that, hey team, if we could share the deck that we have, and then we can get to the second slide here. All right, hey, Lisa, why don't you just give a quick overview of what everybody can expect for us to go through here today on this webinar?
Sure. So we'll be covering four key topics. The first one would be tariff changes in 2026 as of today, the IEEPA tariff refunds, pricing and lead time pressures, as well as what this means for buyers and engineers.
All right, so let's start first about tariff changes in 2026. So a lot happened here pretty quickly in the first quarter of this year. The first major change, there was a pending Supreme Court case contesting the validity of the use of the IEEPA tariffs. And on February 20th, the Supreme Court did indeed overturn the way that the president was using those IEEPA tariffs. So we finally received that decision. We were waiting for that for quite some time. And it's not CBP is responsible for collecting tariffs, and they needed a couple days in order to make the changes in their system in order to be able to respond to that decision. And then on February 24th, that was the beginning where CBP stopped collecting IEEPA tariffs for anything that was being imported into the country. And there was various IEEPA tariffs depending on the country of origin. But our president very quickly acted and implemented on that same date Section 122 tariffs on almost all countries, with a few exceptions, and a few exceptions to some products, with a 10% surcharge. And those we'll walk through exactly what in more details what that looks like. But that was an overview of events that happened that were most impactful, and how that's impacting our orders that we import, the product we import here into the country, and ultimately deliver to our incredible clients, and where you guys are impacted by those tariffs. So if we go to the next slide, Lisa.
Sure. So this slide here, we're just going to review and provide complete clarity on what the current import tariff rates are. So as you see under Section 301, the 25%, that 25% Section 301 in effect today was first implemented in 2018. So that was the original China tariff. And the Section 122 is the new 10% global tariff that went into effect on February 24th. This is a temporary import surcharge, and under current law, it's only permitted to be imposed for a maximum of 150 days. So in total for China, the import tariff on power conversion components is 35%. And then if we go to the next slide on the remaining countries, the Section 122 is going to be 10% on all countries except for Canada and Mexico. And again, this is a temporary tariff that will be in effect for 150 days, and this is set to expire on July 24th of this year.
Hey, Lisa, so I'll add something to that. And by the way, if anyone has a question, you put it in the chat. We'll make sure we answer it. And we're also going to leave time at the end in the event anyone has any questions, or you can raise your virtual hand, and our team will make sure that we get you unmuted. A couple of things. Number one, that is the duration of that is 150 days max, unless Congress votes to agree to extend it, which Congress doesn't agree on a lot, so that's fairly unlikely. So that is the premise there of how that works. So there is a possibility it can be extended, but it's really unlikely that Congress will agree on anything that it will, which would lead for them to make that extension.
Okay, and there's currently two new Section 301 investigations in effect. So the first one launched on March 11th. So this Section 301 investigation focuses on countries that overproduce key goods such as aluminum and steel, and this can disrupt market stability between supply and demand. And when you move over to the right of the slide, the second Section 301 investigation is targeting countries where forced labor is used to produce key commodities, creating unfair trade practices. And we just have a little note that the countries over to the left are also included in the 60 countries over to the right. Now, the intentions of these investigations is to assess whether these countries are engaging in practices that negatively impact U.S. industries. And any findings of wrongdoing during these investigations may prompt the U.S. to take action and counter these practices by imposing Section 301 tariffs. And ultimately, what this means is that for these countries, we can potentially expect that long-term tariffs will go into effect once the Section 122 expires on July 24th.
So, Lisa, I think what's important to realize is that the current administration understood that there was a good probability that the Supreme Court was going to overturn the usage of IEEPA tariffs, even though they may have not expressed that, but they had a plan B. And their plan B all along was accomplish this through Section 301 investigations and ultimately impose Section 301 tariffs on specific countries and specific HTS codes, similar to the way the president did in his first administration. Now, the reason why they never did that to begin with was because it's a long, drawn-out process. There's less flexibility for them to be able to respond faster and to make actions faster. While which works against the president's current negotiation style. However, for us that have to deal with the ramifications of these tariffs, it's better for us because we have more visibility and predictability and more stability of what the tariffs are. And we don't have to worry about waking up tomorrow morning and the tariffs go from 15% to 160% tomorrow, because now there's some guardrails currently established via the Supreme Court to how an administration can actually implement tariffs. And what they're ultimately, it's safe to assume and make a conclusion that the current administration is going to use these Section 301 investigations to ultimately get back at the same tariff level that they were previously at with each individual country through these tariffs, through these Section 301 tariffs. And there are like I'd say probably 90% of the countries that we are importing from in terms of country of origin are on here. There are a couple exceptions. And unfortunately, none of those countries are the major manufacturers of the electronic components, specifically power conversion components that we deliver to the market. And in addition to that, talking about time frame, like what is the expectation of when these Section 301 tariffs can be actually implemented? Well, the realistic timing for this investigation to complete, because there's different stages they need to go through, and some of them are required, the stages require a certain amount of time. Earliest would be late Q3 2026, and most likely the fourth quarter of this year or maybe early 2027. But historically, that first China 301 investigation that the president implemented in his first term was 11 months from when the investigation began to when the actual tariffs were implemented. But I would imagine that they're going to do their best to fast track this to the extent that they can control, to be able to, because they want that revenue back from the tariffs. Okay, we could talk about, all right, this is something that, look, everybody's like, hey, the Supreme Court ruled that, that was unlawful for you to collect those IEEPA tariffs, so we want our money back, right? And of course we do. So what's the status of tariff refunds? This is a big question that we get. Well, number one, the International Trade, the Court of International Trade ruled that the tariffs must be refunded. And what's happening right now is that CBP is building a refund system that is not yet complete, and they're actually required to provide updates to the Court of International Trade periodically to prove that the progress is being made. And it is being made. They have a, I don't want to get too far in the weeds and confuse everybody, but they have a what they call a consolidated administration and processing of entries system, which has 4 components, which starts with claims and the first component, and the last is actually providing refunds. And they're all almost more than 50% complete. And the target date here to get complete, I believe, is sometime in April. However, there is a lot of uncertainty about which entries are going to actually qualify for refunds and what those timing of the refunds are actually going to be. But right now, the government could be on the hook for, if everything qualified, to be 160 billion, I think. And I think that if I've read that every month that passes, the interest on that would be $650 million per month of interest that also would need to be passed through. So what are we doing here at TRC Electronics right now in order to be able to position ourselves in a position to capture those refunds and be able to transfer them back to the clients where we can match the inventory that was actually charged at IEEPA tariff. TRC was the importer of record. TRC received the refund, and now we could pass that back along to our clients. Well, first we're going through a process. We're protesting eligible entries to preserve our refund rights, because there is some confusion about which is going to be eligible and what's not. And it's almost like we're doing something that's giving us an insurance on it. And once we understand what the process actually is from CBP and what is actually eligible, we'll be supporting our clients and creating a process for our clients to be able to submit requests as we get clarity on that.
Okay, so we're going to touch a little bit on pricing and lead time pressures. So, with the IEEPA tariffs kind of just on the back burner and the Section 122 in effect, What we're seeing in the marketplace right now is some slight price increases as well as increase in lead times. And, this isn't only contributed to one factor. There's multiple things happening in the marketplace with the fluctuations in the tariffs where it's causing prices to go up, lead times to be extended. A lot of manufacturers are also building in some risk factors into their price with the possibility that some countries will have that Section 301 go into effect once the Section 122 expires. And with the lead times, with tariffs being at a low right now at 10% for the majority of the countries, except for China, a lot of companies are front loading their orders, getting it in at the lower rate, which is also causing a backlog in production and also a strain in component sourcing. We have a note here about AI and data centers and the impact on supply chain. So, AI is booming. It's in high demand. So there's a lot of data centers that are being built to support AI, and that's also taking up a lot of resources in terms of production and supply. So that's also contributing to the lead time extensions. So something that we just want everyone to keep in mind is as you're planning the remainder of 2026, just keeping in mind that the impact that this is going to have on your orders and planning ahead and getting ahead of these lead times and also these price increases will put you in a better position when you do need to place that order. We can definitely help support and get those orders in before these lead times go any further, the prices continue to go up.
Yeah, if I were to, there's a question in chat I'm going to answer in a moment, but to summarize this here, look, our component manufacturers that serve as our suppliers and our vendors, they're signaling price increases in the future. And you got currency pressure and there's rising costs of materials. And secondly, lead times are 20% longer than 12 months ago, and they're going to be stretched even further. And you've got a lot of demand happening, some pull forward. So we're seeing that and we're communicating that here, but also we're communicating that with our clients so that we're planning in advance. And this AI build out, even though they may be purchasing components that are different, it's putting stresses on the supply chain, on the materials, and some components that might overlap. But there's just a massive expansion of what has to happen for these data centers to support what we're going to be, the transformation that's going to happen in AI over the next several years. And the question that Ann had was, I see Mexico, will USMCA still apply? So Mexico is under the 301 investigation. Well, nobody knows the answer to that, but I could just imagine that the president's going to want to have that investigation done so that if he wants to, in his negotiations, apply Section 301 tariffs to Mexico or Canada, for instance, he's got that, he has that ability to do that. But what he actually does when that happens is anybody's guess. Who knows how that's going to work out. Okay, so Lisa, and I hope that answered it. I wish I had the magic, I wish I could look into the future and figure that out, but I don't. So really important here. Okay, most importantly, we've got information, right? All right, information is great. It's nice to know, but if you don't know what to do with it, well, then what value is it really at the end of the day? I just know some information, but this is how we could translate it for our clients. We've got so many incredible engineers we partner with and purchasing and procurement professionals at all the manufacturers that we work with. Number one is that, look, tariffs are impacting current orders. So you've got a reduced tariff rate right now, and we're implementing what that current tariff rate is on any of our new orders. So if you're buying a product with the country of origin from China from us, and this is a new order, you're going to see the 35% total tariff, which is a reduction from what it had been for the past several months. Non-China imports, we're not selling anything that's country of origin, Canada or Mexico. Everything else is going to be a 10% surcharge for that tariff, which is a reduction of what it's been over the past several months. So and that will be for new orders, because anything new that we're bringing in, we're going to have the new tariff rate. And also, where the IEEPA tariffs no longer apply on back orders, we're adjusting them for older orders prior to shipping, because where we know that we're not responsible for those IEEPA tariffs, or haven't been because we've imported it post IEEPA tariffs, we're making those adjustments on a weekly basis as orders are scheduled to ship. So that's how it's impacting current orders. Secondly, now's the time to secure your supply, your demand, and these lower pricing levels. So there's a couple things that you can make some calculated investments as a purchasing professional right now. Is number one, tariffs aside, you can lock in demand at current pricing levels before those prices increase. And when you look at pricing increases, they're typically, in this kind of environment, you might see like a 2 to 5% most typically from a manufacturer, and you could expect to see that from most component manufacturers now through the end of the year. You can lock it in at current levels. And secondly, you could plan for the fact that, hey, we know that tariffs will not go lower than they are right now. That's for certain. I mean, you could have a great deal of certainty with that. They're only going to increase. And we have this window while the Section 301 investigations are happening, where we have a reduction in tariff rates and we can lock in at these, but we've got to order in a manner where the import is happening in this window. And you estimate that import has to happen between now and say, like, the longer you go into you fall into Q3 or Q4, you're going to be, that's where you're going to be taking a risk. But we know if we're getting Q2 and really early Q3, or if it's in stock right now, I can lock in some really great savings. And also making sure you're ordering ahead to stay in front of extended lead times, because the biggest impact that's going to be, well, number one, I would say that you've got purchasing professionals that are already doing this and knowing that, hey, I could get some great discounts today. And so that's putting some pressure on lead times. So you want to get in line, but also this AI infrastructure build out is going to pressure the supply chain. The supply chain is not meant to handle exponential growth of manufacturing, which the manufacturers happening at these AI data centers. It's meant to handle like this slow, steady growth. And we saw that a few years ago when we had the supply chain disruptions post-COVID, where all of a sudden everybody dropped their inventory, they dropped their manufacturing, and everything had to gear up. The supply chain couldn't handle it, and it broke it, and we had like a real pull down from it. Number three, design for supply chain reliability. This is really important, especially at the engineering level. I would advise engineers, and we're advising our engineers that are selecting components, make sure that you're selecting components from manufacturers with proven availability and consistent supply. There's manufacturers of components that had a really, really harder time than others during the previous supply chain disruption. And we know from speaking with those, very few of them made any changes that will allow them to overcome it if it happens again, because they figured it was like a once in a 50-year type of event. So if we really get pressured in our supply chain with this AI infrastructure build out over the next few years, those manufacturers that had the longest lead times and had the hardest time dealing with this are going to be dealing with it again, and they're not going to be reliable component manufacturers. So engage early to confirm lead times of what they really are, and work closely with your distribution partners and make sure you're working with a distribution partner that actually has communication. You get real people on the phone. They understand, they learn and seek to understand what your needs are and how your fulfillment's going to be even after the design cycle, so they can help you manage lead times and allocation and make sure you're making the right selection, not just simply for your specifications, but you've also got commercial considerations that are equally and sometimes more important, because you can have the best design in the world, but if you can't deliver, well, you're never going to be able to be successful in terms of delivering your product to the marketplace. Okay, so awesome. So we wanted to give you guys so much information, and like, how do we summarize, take something so complicated that's been going on and like simplify it in the simplest way possible, and then be able to present it to you, to everybody here. Um, does anybody have a question, or Melissa or Lisa, is there anything that you guys think that we could provide, any type of additional answers to anything that's been happening? That you're seeing from clients that would add more value?
Yeah, hi, Stephen. Melissa here. I did receive a direct message here. A client was asking in regards to tariff and tracking, how are they able to track what tariffs they actually paid with their suppliers? Because most suppliers are invoicing them separately or just putting a line item that says tariff.
All right. Well, that's a great question. So I can't answer the question for other suppliers, but I can answer how TRC Electronics does it. So we were very intentional when you'll see on the invoice anybody that purchased from TRC Electronics, and if a tariff was applied, you'll have a specific line item on the invoice, but it won't simply say tariff. It'll actually say tariff 10%, tariff 25%, tariff 35%. So you'll know specifically the tariff rate that you paid for that particular product, which allows us to also have that transparency and that visibility, so that we are able to track that down and identify what tariff was actually transferred to you from the import.
Thanks, Stephen. I have, there's two more questions that came in here. One was, is that CBP portal or this refund portal available to everybody?
It will be available to the importer of record. So here's how it works. So and if where TRC Electronics is the importer of record, we will be able to access that for our imports. Now, there are some products where TRC Electronics is not the importer of record, because our component manufacturing suppliers have a US warehouse, and we receive product from their US warehouse, and they were the importer of record. So in those cases, we won't be able to submit a request for a refund to the CBP. We're depending on our supplier of submitting the refund request to CBP. So that what ends up happening now, this slows everything down. And also there's where we lose control over it, because we're relying on a supplier to do it. And you want to have proactive suppliers that are going to be really aggressive with going after on your behalf. So in those cases where we're not the importer of record, we would need to wait for them to submit, them to receive refund, them to transfer a refund to us, which will allow us to transfer a refund to our client. But if we're the importer of record, we go directly to CBP, then we submit the request, we receive the refund, and that allows us to be in a position to refund our clients where that tied into that specific import.
There's another one that just popped up in the chat.
Will ACE show the paid about after a protest adjustment? And can you clarify that question, or maybe we could get you to, because I'm not sure I understand the question. I think it's going to be a really great one. Can you either clarify it, or we get you to unmute? Is someone asking Ann to unmute, or
I
maybe
got it. Yep. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
there you go. Yes, I do. Hi, Ann. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent.
So we've done a lot of protests because of the copper in the 232. It seems like every time we import it, they can't seem to get it right. So my question is when I go in the ACE portal and I'm running reports and it's showing how much I paid, is that after any adjustments that have been done from previous protests where if if we got it a check in the mail or if we got an additional invoice?
Lisa, do you know the answer to that question? Because you might have more, you have better context of actually getting in that portal because I don't, I haven't personally been in that portal myself.
Sure. Hi, Ann. So in your ACE portal, I don't know if you have access to the protest section, but that protest section should have all the information that you submitted to have that adjustment made. And there should be a column with the amount and then also the status of that protest.
So if we're going to do a new protest for the IEPA tariffs, do we need to include that previous protest information or no?
I think that's a great question. I would figure that you don't because it's a separate protest. What I would do is Lisa, the best person to ask that would be your what do we use Mohawk? What do we call that company?
Yeah, if you have a broker that does all of your filings, they would be a really great resource to go to get that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, to make sure we do it right. And unfortunately, they're not giving us a lot of clarity on really how this works. But what we're doing is anything that you've imported that's less than less than 180 days ago, you want to make that, you want to protest that. So start with the oldest for anything you imported that because that's what can be protested if it's so it was liquidated less than 100 days ago, which means it's quote not final. And you want to start protesting the oldest that were liquidated less than 180 days ago, but not more than, because that's considered final. And you can't protest that as far as we understand. You lose protest rights. And those are the ones you want to start. So start with the oldest because before that window closes on you. And then here's this is the tough part. Nobody can tell anybody like, hey, if it was over 100 days it's actually final, or is the government going to cooperate and provide freely allow us to receive that or not? And that's where like the gray area is when that liquidation is final.
If you are the importer of record and you run all of your imports, all those imports will give you a liquidation date. That's how you can prioritize the filings.
Which is what we're doing right now on behalf of our clients. Okay, awesome. Anything else in regards to tariff refunds? Will the new portal system from CB make it easy for imports to file refunds their own, or we still need to? Okay, Lisa, you can you can answer that one because you're involved in this process.
So if you have a customs broker, they can help get you started. And then if you have someone within the organization that has experience with doing the filings, you can do it on your own independently. If you have all the rights set up in the ACE portal.
Yeah.
There's certain features that need to be enabled in the ACE portal.
We do have legal advice that we're working with, and we're doing a lot of work with our custom broker to be able to facilitate a lot of this and guide us through making sure the administrative end is being done properly. All right, very good. Okay, awesome, guys. Hey, so this webinar will be on our YouTube channel. We'll be emailing the link out to it later, so you'll have access to this if anybody wants to be able to rewatch parts of it or share with anybody in your team. It'll be a great resource for everybody to be able to reference. And just on behalf of myself, Lisa, and the rest of the TRC team, we really appreciate everybody. And we're looking forward to helping you guys succeed and grow through this next several months of this process. And we do this particular webinar once a quarter, and where we're just going to provide you guys the most important information that's going to help you. Hey, Mohammed, appreciate you too. Got everybody have an incredible rest of the day, and we'll be talking to you everybody soon.